exposing the Black Hand of Australia. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. Hello, John.
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm pretty good, actually. A lot going on, but very important conversation this. And I think we're going to give people a little bit of context for some of the stuff we've been doing recently.
Yes, Martin, I think it's fair to say that you and I were very surprised with how strong our last show went in terms of the ratings, and a lot of new people have been logging in. A lot of people watched our last show for the first time, and people haven't been following the story. And a lot of people said, what is this person talking about? He's talking for 20 minutes and he's rambling on and he can't get to the point. And I was trying to go into some of the comments and say, we've been doing this for 9 months. You need to understand the context to understand where we're up to in the story and to understand how real this is. Because some people was asking the question, is this real or is this some sort of fake channel or whatever the case may be? So I thought we would just give a bit of a shorter précis of the journey that has been, and obviously give a bit of a signal as to where we're going to go forward. So Marta, I'll start with this just so our audience can understand. In 2021, I get a tip-off of a major corporate fraud in Australia, something that shocked me to the core. And I thought to myself, I can't let this go. I need to find out whether this is true or false. So I basically drop everything, conduct my own investigation for 9 months, self-funded $50,000. The end result of that was I came up with a file of evidence of 608 pages, signed by my barrister. And on the 6th of April in 2022, last year, I went to Asic, the Australian Securities Investments Commission, walked into their office and I said, John Adams is here. I have this folder on behalf of me and my barrister. We would like to formally lodge it with ASIC. We're asking for ASIC to open up an official government criminal investigation into what we think, in terms of the big organized crime scandal that we think we've not only that have we discovered, but we think we've been able to prove the existence of. So that's what I did. Now, the chances of getting a criminal investigation for someone walking off the street, it's less than 1%. And we'll get into that statistic shortly. But what we can tell the audience was that by the 4th of July last year, ASIC indeed conducted their own, but they started a criminal investigation into what I call the package, which is my file of evidence, because the evidence that I was able to assemble over 9 months was so compelling. And so investigation started 4th of July last year. Here we are 12 months on, and the investigation is still ongoing. I've had about 5 confirmations in the last 15 months that there is an ongoing official government investigation into the allegations I put forward to the government. And that is the first big storyline. And so as we go into the second half of 2023, we are still waiting to find out whether the allegations of a massive criminal conspiracy are true or false, and what is going to be the outcome of that. Now, the complicating factor, and for those who are new to this channel and the storyline, we did a show, recorded it in early March. We published it in early April. It's called The Final Secret, exposing the Australian Prime Minister. The issue that has come up during the course of this criminal investigation is that the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has appeared with the people who I call the crooks, the organised crime syndicate, and basically gave them a seal of approval, a big tick in public. And this is what we say is the first time in Australian history where the sitting Prime Minister has endorsed alleged criminals during an official criminal investigation, and the risk of the Prime Minister's intervention compromising the investigation. I mean, that is a big risk. And that's what we covered in terms of The Final Secret, in terms of that show a couple of months ago. Now, what we tried to convey in the last show is that because I know when the Prime Minister did these public events, I've used the freedom of information process to obtain documents about the Prime Minister's public actions to understand who initiated these events, what were the circumstances around that, what was the internal chatter within the government, and any other clues that we can understand what the PM is really on about. Now, what happened last Friday of last week was the Prime Minister's office denied that the Prime Minister had actually done a series of public events with these alleged criminals, even though there were other people in the government who appeared with the Prime Minister in these public events, and the other people inside the government admit that these events took place. So the fact that the Prime Minister's office is now denying things that have been filmed, that have been photographed, that is what we were trying to convey in terms of the first storyline in terms of our last show. So hopefully that clears that up. And basically people need to understand there's a massive government investigation into organized corporate fraud. At the same time, the Prime Minister has intervened to assist, whether they're his friends or associates or whoever. There's been an intervention by the Prime Minister, and we are very concerned that the investigation may go in a direction which may not be in the public interest. And we've been ringing the alarm bells around that whole circumstance.
Yeah, and John, we should say that clearly we are not publicly mentioning the firm, nor indeed the line of business that they're in, nor indeed the specific event that the Prime Minister turned up to, because that would create whole loads of risk. But there is actually a lot of evidence and a lot of data behind, which of course is in the report that you presented back to ASIC.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm glad you mentioned that, Martin, because there's a whole bunch of people said, well, give me the specifics. And if you don't, I don't believe you. Well, unfortunately, we've received legal advice that we can't give the specifics because of potentially getting sued and a whole bunch of other things. So if people think this is a fake, no, this is very real. We have received legal advice, and so we want to talk about some of these topics publicly. We have to do it in a certain way that we protect our in terms of our legal position. And so that's why we speak in code. That's why we speak quite guardedly about some of these things. But if anyone has been looking at this channel, we've got 4 or 5 years of broadcasting content. We've done some very serious things over the last 4 or 5 years, including fighting the $10,000 cash transaction ban that the Morrison government introduced into the parliament in 2019. So we were able to win on that occasion. So we're now in the midst of a new battle to expose systemic fraud across Australia, and that's why we are doing things in a particular way.
Yeah, and it's not because we're trying to obfuscate in any way, but we have just to protect that legal position in the current environment. But of course, this is set against the context of a broader set of issues regarding ASIC and its inability to do its job.
Yes. So we've just covered the first storyline. Now, the second storyline that people need to understand if you're new to this channel and new to what we're doing is when I went to ASIC on the 6th of April last year, and I started to get a feel for this agency, which has a long history of failure, long history of complaints, lots of reviews, inquiries, the Banking Royal Commission, a lot of negative vibes around this agency. It was clear to me that even in the first couple of months of giving them my 600 pages, I wasn't getting the right level of engagement that I was expecting. And I was thinking that all this time and all this money and all this effort wasn't going to actually go in the direction that I wanted to go in terms of in terms of the public interest. So what I did was I went through ASIC's annual reports and found that according to their own numbers, in the last 6, 7, 8 years in particular, they've seen a massive decline in operational performance when it comes to their handling of reports of alleged misconduct. So I decided to write my own independent report. So what I decided to do was I published my report on the 6th of October last year. It was publicised by the ABC and news.com.au. I called for a parliamentary inquiry. 2 parliamentary inquiries were established on the 27th of October, one by the Senate Economics References Committee with Senator Bragg leading that, and the other one was the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Corporations and Financial Services. And over the last 9 months, one inquiry has gone on leaps and bounds, which is the Senator Bragg inquiry. And there's been over 170 submissions into that inquiry. There's been a first public hearing, which happened only a few weeks ago on the 23rd of June. And as we go forward into the next 6 months, there is going to be a range of additional public hearings, and I'm likely to be called, given that I was the instigator of the current inquiry. Now, the one thing I will talk about, just so we can tie into the last show, is that as more and more of these horror stories, so there's been a whole host of horror stories across the country related to ASIC. As these horror stories come to the fore, and I've had the opportunity to speak to, about 20, 30, 40 people across the country who have had a negative experience with ASIC in a whole host of different contexts, that has allowed me to obtain a lot of internal information. We've got some insights. We've been able to uncover what we think is serious malfeasance inside the agency. And what we said in the last show is there's a mainstream journalist who's pursuing a particular story. So we recorded the show last week and we said a story is going to come out this week. So we're now recording on Tuesday night in Australia. And the latest information I have is that this story is about to probably break this weekend. So we'll have to wait and see if that story does actually break. But we are actually not only pursuing ASIC for poor performance, according to their own numbers. It looks like we're going to be uncovering malfeasance at the top of ASIC. And I've been exposed to some of that, like I said in the last show, on a telephone call and a video conference call in late March. And dare I say, as we go forward, we're going to be getting more information about that storyline going forward. So basically, in a nutshell, Martin, is we're going after corporate fraud. Somehow the PMs, for some reason, the PMs got involved in the whole situation. So we're going to find out in the next 6 months whether I was right about the fraud, how much money has been stolen, how many people across the country have been impacted. At the same time, we're going after the cops, i.e. ASIC, and we're basically going to say to the Parliament, the police's performance has been very poor. There's a long history of bad performance, and we need major reform to be able to fix the performance of ASIC so that the entire public can actually benefit from a stronger legal regime where people are not subject to scams and frauds, and in terms of huge corporate disasters as well.
Yeah, and this is worth saying, isn't it, that we've got suspicions that ASIC tried to influence the trajectory up to the inquiry and essentially try and sort of throttle it back and strangle it. And their particular line of argument has been nothing to see here, move on, rather than actually address the substantive issues which are there for anybody to see. And we should also add that there's been a huge degree of submissions to this inquiry from people who've been adversely impacted by ASIC and their handling of specific issues. So on one hand, you've got the Senate asking the right questions. You've got a lot of people providing a lot of evidence. On the other hand, you've got ASIC saying nothing to see here, and significant evidence that they've been trying to dilute the effectiveness of what the Senate's trying to do.
Precisely. The other thing I would say, Martin, is that given how the PM has intervened in this issue with this organised fraud syndicate, the willingness of the government and Labor to reform and fix ASIC, they were saying a lot of positive things before the last election, and now their attitude has changed. And the question is, why is Labor less willing to fix ASIC? Is it anything to do with the Prime Minister? Is it anything to do with my 600-page complaint? These are the big questions that we're continuing to pursue. I think we're going to see a lot of interesting stuff coming forward in the next 6 months. So, Martin, if we can summarize this, if people want to know what's really going on in the financial system, why are things happening the way they are. This channel is leading the charge, attempting to expose systemic fraud, attempting to expose corruption, if not incompetence, at ASIC, and we're trying to make the country a better place. We were able to be successful in 2019, 2020 when we pursued our fight against the $10,000 cash transaction ban. We have a whole host of other things that we've done in the past where we've been able to yield results, but perhaps this is the biggest fight of this channel. And we're not just commentating, we're not just talking about it, we're actually engaging in real action with real people in real processes. And obviously, you'll be seeing me before the federal parliament in the next 6 months, and I'll have a lot to say when I get to speak under parliamentary privilege.
Absolutely. And just to underscore again, this isn't just about grandstanding from the sidelines. This is about wrought-in change that is significantly overdue in Australia in the interest of the people. And because of that, we'll keep pushing as hard and as far as we can.
Absolutely.
Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. We'll see you next time.